I grew up in many different places. It's very hard for me to actually say that I have a hometown. When I was a child, I moved 11 times with my family. I went to undergraduate school at Wheaton College outside of Chicago, and then I was in the city for about 4 years before I moved to New York City, and I've been in New York for 23 years until just coming to Pittsburgh this fall. The first time I really kind of remember getting into music was in kindergarten, and my kindergarten teacher was a pianist, and she had an upright in the classroom. And I just have this vague memory of us sitting there and like singing songs while she played, and she told my mother that she thought I was musical. So we had this little like 2.5, 3 octave electric organ. It was called an organaire. I never heard jazz growing up. I was always a classical major. I was like, wow, this is so cool. People are not reading from the page all the time, and they're interacting, and it reminds me of classical chamber music in a way because the listening feels like it's so intense, and chamber music was always something I loved playing and I still like doing. So I was really kind of going off like in a different direction while I was still doing all my classical music work too. But I started writing more, I would say, songs in college. I did it early on, but really, especially when I started playing jazz and I had the opportunity to form my own group. So I started writing trio music for my group, and then I just kept doing that while I was in Chicago. I got an invitation from the jazz pianist, the late Dr. Billy Taylor, and he invited me to perform at the Mary Lou Williams Women in Jazz Festival at the Kennedy Center. But then when I found that Williams had written all the sacred music, I started checking out all her sacred music, and then just listening to as many recordings of hers as I could get my hands on, like from starting in the 1940s, a lot of her records in the 60s and 70s, and just seeing that she had such a huge breadth of material. A big thing I take from Mary Lou is that she was an experimentalist and she was an individual, and she was always leading the way. For everyone, I think finding your voice, it takes time. I mean, it's not something that just happens automatically, and sort of the more you just go towards what you feel attracted to, the more you find your own original voice. I'm very sensitive to language and poetry, and lots of times I can hear a poem and I can hear a rhythm right away, a part of the poem that will just suggest a larger thing for me to expand on. Music goes in so many different places, it's very hard to just pin a genre on it or say that it's one thing or the other. Early March 2019 is when I played as a guest with the Pittsburgh Symphony doing a couple of Mary Lou's pieces. That was really my first time being a featured guest with an orchestra. It was amazing. I mean, the thing I feel in general here in Pittsburgh, and I felt it with the Symphony too, is that people are very welcoming. So many people are knowledgeable about jazz history here, and to feel kind of like embraced in the community in that way, and I felt that from the orchestra too. I appreciate that very much with the Symphony, and I appreciate that about the people of Pittsburgh too.